Being poor is expensive in ways that are often invisible to people who have never experienced long-term financial instability. Most discussions about poverty focus on income alone, but the deeper problem is that low resources create systems of constant friction, where everyday decisions become more costly, more stressful, and more damaging over time. The financial burden is not only about having less money, it is about paying more for nearly everything while carrying significantly higher psychological pressure at the same time. Two people can buy the exact same product, need the exact same service, or face the exact same emergency, yet the person with fewer financial reserves will usually pay a much higher total cost across months and years. Poverty does not simply reduce purchasing power, it changes the entire mathematical structure of daily life. Imagine a small financial emergency that costs $500. For a financially stable person with savings, the problem may be inconvenient but manageable. The money leaves an account, the issue gets solved immediately, and life continues with relatively little disruption. For someone living paycheck to paycheck, however, the same emergency can trigger a chain reaction. Without savings, the expense may go onto a high-interest credit card, require a payday loan, delay rent payments, or force the cancellation of another essential expense. What began as a single $500 problem can quietly become a $1,000 problem through fees, penalties, interest accumulation, and emotional stress. The original cost is often only the beginning. This creates one of the most misunderstood realities of poverty. Wealth buys flexibility, and flexibility reduces financial damage. People with savings can act quickly, make rational decisions under pressure, and avoid expensive emergency solutions. People without reserves are often forced into reactive choices because time itself becomes a luxury. When rent is due immediately, the cheapest long-term option is not always available. Fast decisions become necessary, and fast decisions are usually expensive. The same pattern appears in nearly every part of modern life. Buying in bulk is usually cheaper per unit, but bulk purchasing requires upfront cash that many households simply do not have available. Someone with financial breathing room can purchase larger quantities, wait for discounts, compare long-term value, and avoid convenience pricing. Someone under constant financial pressure often buys smaller amounts repeatedly because smaller purchases are all that fit inside the immediate weekly budget. Ironically, this means lower-income households frequently pay more for the same goods over time. Transportation follows a similar pattern. Reliable vehicles require maintenance, but maintenance costs money up front. When repairs are delayed because cash is unavailable, small issues become major breakdowns. Missing work because of transportation failure can create additional financial instability, which then makes future repairs even harder to afford. The system compounds in both directions. Stability tends to create more stability, while financial fragility increases the probability of future setbacks. Housing creates another powerful example. People with strong credit profiles and savings often gain access to safer neighborhoods, lower interest rates, lower insurance costs, and more stable leases. People with weaker financial positions frequently face higher deposits, predatory lending structures, unstable rental conditions, and increased fees. The financial system interprets instability as risk, then charges more money because of that risk. In effect, the people least able to absorb extra costs are often the ones paying the highest penalties. Behavioral economics helps explain why these cycles become so difficult to escape. Scarcity changes cognition. When the brain is constantly focused on immediate survival problems, long-term optimization becomes harder. Decision-making narrows toward urgent concerns because urgent concerns cannot be ignored. Researchers sometimes describe this as bandwidth reduction. Financial stress consumes mental energy that would otherwise be available for planning, comparison, learning, or strategic thinking. This does not mean poorer individuals are less intelligent or less disciplined. It means human cognition behaves differently under continuous pressure. Imagine trying to think carefully about long-term investing, career planning, or financial education while simultaneously worrying about overdue bills, transportation reliability, food costs, and account balances. The brain prioritizes immediate threats first because survival systems evolved to handle urgency before strategy. Over time, this creates a psychological environment where short-term relief becomes emotionally more valuable than long-term optimization, even when the long-term choice would mathematically produce better outcomes. Debt amplifies this pressure even further because high-interest borrowing accelerates financial friction. Wealthy individuals often gain access to low-interest capital that helps assets grow, while financially unstable individuals are more likely to encounter high-interest debt that extracts resources continuously. This creates an important asymmetry within the economic system. The same financial tool called debt can either increase wealth or intensify instability depending on the terms attached to it. Interest rates are not just mathematical numbers, they are pressure multipliers. A person paying extremely high interest on emergency borrowing may spend years repaying far more than the original expense. During that period, future savings become harder to build because cash flow is constantly redirected toward old obligations. The system begins feeding on itself. Existing financial pressure reduces flexibility, reduced flexibility increases borrowing probability, and additional borrowing creates more pressure. Escaping the cycle often requires not just discipline, but enough stability to interrupt the compounding process itself. Time also behaves differently across income levels. Financially secure individuals can often save time by outsourcing difficult or repetitive tasks, paying for convenience selectively, or solving problems early before they escalate. Financial instability tends to produce the opposite effect. More hours are spent comparing prices, waiting for services, fixing preventable problems later, handling payment complications, and recovering from avoidable disruptions. Poverty taxes time as much as it taxes money. There is also a hidden emotional cost that rarely appears in economic statistics. Constant financial uncertainty changes stress patterns inside the body and mind. Anxiety about bills, emergencies, debt, and instability can slowly reshape behavior, sleep quality, relationships, concentration, and long-term confidence. Many people experiencing financial pressure are not simply managing numbers, they are managing persistent uncertainty. That uncertainty can affect decision-making in subtle ways that accumulate over years. Modern consumer systems often intensify these pressures through monthly payment structures and convenience financing. Many products are designed to appear affordable in the short term while becoming significantly more expensive over time. For financially stressed households, the ability to delay pain becomes emotionally attractive, even when the long-term math is unfavorable. The system understands that immediate relief often outweighs future efficiency when pressure is high enough. This is why financial resilience matters so much more than appearances. A person with moderate income and strong reserves may be mathematically safer than someone earning significantly more but living with no margin for error. The ability to absorb shocks without entering destructive financial spirals becomes one of the most important forms of stability in modern economies. Small reserves can prevent large long-term damage because they interrupt the chain reaction before it expands. None of this means poverty automatically determines a person's future or that financial mobility is impossible. Human outcomes are influenced by education, opportunity, health, geography, policy, family structures, economic conditions, and countless other variables. But understanding the hidden cost structure of poverty explains why escaping instability often takes far longer than outside observers expect. The issue is rarely one isolated bad decision. More often, it is an environment where nearly every decision carries amplified consequences. The financial system rewards stability because stable people are easier to predict, easier to lend to, and less expensive to insure. At the same time, instability becomes financially penalized at almost every stage. This creates a feedback loop where resources influence future access to resources. Once viewed through this lens, poverty looks less like a simple shortage of money and more like a continuous exposure to compounding friction. One of the most important insights in personal finance is that small buffers create disproportionate protection. Emergency savings, reduced fixed expenses, manageable debt levels, reliable transportation, and financial flexibility all reduce the probability that minor setbacks become major crises. Financial security is not only about income size, it is also about how resistant a system is to disruption. In many ways, wealth functions as shock absorption. It reduces the financial consequences of mistakes, emergencies, delays, and uncertainty. Poverty often removes that protection entirely, forcing people to operate with very little room for error. When every setback carries amplified cost, long-term progress naturally becomes more difficult. Understanding this changes how financial behavior should be viewed. People under constant economic pressure are often responding rationally to unstable conditions, even when those decisions appear inefficient from the outside. The mathematics of scarcity changes incentives, timelines, and priorities. Once that becomes visible, the phrase "being poor is expensive" stops sounding like a contradiction and starts sounding like a description of how modern financial systems actually behave.